Hello and welcome to my channel. Today we will learn how to create a 3D floor plan dashboard in Home Assistant. In the previous videos we have seen how we can create the 3D floor plan with the furniture, with the lights, with the outdoors, garage, all the elements, and definitely this is left to you to design how you want the house to look like. So the next step now is to import this into Home Assistant, and in order to do this we have to export it first from Sweet Home 3D. So simply we go to the 3D view, export to object format, and this is the format which Home Assistant will be able to understand. So we export the whole thing. Let me put it on the desktop. So let me create a folder and we put Home Assistant, and I will export this file into this folder to prepare it to move it into Home Assistant. So now we have here the Home Assistant folder, and we have a zip file. First thing, we need to extract the zip file into the same folder. So this is now the output, which has all the elements we used in our floor plan, plus two main files, the object file and the MTL file. And now the next step is to move the whole folder into our Home Assistant directory, which is under configuration, under www, which is the custom. And simply I will add it here, so it will be copied. Now we are done. Now we can move to Home Assistant, and we have to first install the 3D card, which will be under hacks. If you don't have hacks, then I suggest that you maybe view some of the videos online or material where you can download it. And we need to download this card and install it. Your Home Assistant Digital Twin Floor 3D card. So I had installed it already, and let's go now to a blank dashboard which I created, and I created it in the form of having like one panel. So the view type is panel card, and simply I will add my 3D card. So initially it comes with an example where you can see a sample house. As you see, what we have to do is that we need to understand what are all these 5 elements in the card. So the first one is related to the model itself. Where is the path and what are the file names, the object file and the MTL file. The second one is how we can see the floor plan, some options to add shadows, lights, and so on, which we will explain in details later. And then the third one is what are the entities which are linked to the objects in this plan. And then the fourth one is the object group. So sometimes I have like 3-4 devices which are linked to one switch, so I don't want to click one by one. And then some options about the zoom areas. So we will start with the 3D model part. We had put the file in the local under demo 3D folder, and the name of the object file is demo 3d.obj, and the MTL file is demo3d.mtl. Now if I click save, it will show me an error because the example has some entities. So let's remove these entities from the example. Also let's remove the object groups, and we hit save. So now as we see, we have exactly the same model we had in the Sweet Home 3D in Home Assistant, and I still can move it, move in, move out, zoom in, and so on. But so far the entities which we created in the form of lights or fans is not linked to any entity within Home Assistant. So this will be the next step. So we go to the edit, and for this purpose I created some inputs to be able to play with these lights virtually. So let's add, for example, the dining room light. So we need to understand what is the object name of this light, and to be able to do this we only have to double click on the object and it will show me the object ID. So I copy the object ID and I select my entity. So as I mentioned, I created an input boolean in Home Assistant. So this will be dining right here. Now there's a small option here which we have to open to identify what are the objects and what are the types of these objects. So the types can be light, color, room, height, show, and so on, as we see. So in this case, we are having a light entity. This is the nature, and the system will ask us about the object ID. So I will paste what we have copied before. So now we identify that this object belongs to this entity. And let's hit save and see what will happen. So now I have the dining room and I have the light in the dining room and I have the entity linked to the light of the dining room. If we double click here, it will light. If we double click again, it will turn off. And here, if I open in another window the input switch, we will realize that it is switching it on and off. So for the dining room, here it is 3D dining. So it's off now. If I go here and I double click, it's switched on. So this is how we link our objects into Home Assistant entities. And as we see, I can still move it, I can still zoom in, I can still zoom out. It's very nice to have. Now we can go back and customize the light a little bit. So we go back to the card and play with the appearance. And as you see, for example, currently the light is on, but I cannot see shadows here. And maybe adding some shadows to the picture will give it like some more live feeling. So simply I go to the shadow, which is under the appearance menu, and I'll switch it on. So save, and I can see shadows now. So if I switch on the light, let me go to the real view. Now I switch on the light, there are shadows. I switch off the light, there are no shadows, which is one of the options I can have. Now let's go again and create a group for the kitchen, because as we see, the kitchen has two lights, which in my setup I put it in one switch. So I need to go to the object groups and I add a group, and let me call this group kitchen. And in this kitchen I will have multiple objects. So the first object ID is this light, the second object ID is this light. So simply I get the object ID and paste it here, and then I add another object and I copy it and I paste it here. Now we have an object group called kitchen. I go back to the entities and I add an entity and I put input for kitchen, which will be here, and I add the option. I go to the details here, and instead of putting a single object, I put kitchen here in this format. Okay, and definitely I have to identify this as light. And there is another trick here where you can adjust the intensity of light. So let me put it as maybe 500 lumens and I click save. If now I double click on the kitchen, it will light, and similarly on the other light. So any of them will give me the same impact. Okay, and similarly the dining room. Now we can go and complete the assignment of entities to objects, and let's put the living room. So again, living room is a group, so I will create another group. Let me call it living in this case, and and I add here, I add here the object to it, and we have two objects here. This one 680, and the other object is 682, and I add it here. And then I go up in my entities, I add another entity, and I select my entity name, which is living in this case. And I add an object to it, and it is light, and the object is living. And let's add like 500 lumens. And let's remove the shadow from this one, save, and here we are, living room, dining room, kitchen. So all are working now. What else we can do? Now we have similarly all the lights here as we see, and we can have now the fans, which has another type, because when the fan is on it rotates. And let's now define how we can do this. So I go to my card again, and as we see, the fan doesn't have like one part. So if we click on the blade here, the blade has two objects, not only one. So that's why we have to ensure that we identify the two objects, so that if I click maybe on the brown area, it will respond, or vice versa. So let's get the black part first, which is 740, and let me create an object here, which is fan. Let me put fan living. Okay, and I will add the first object. Then I go and get the brown object, which is 741 in this case, and I paste it here, 741, and this is now the fan for me. If I want to add this part, maybe I can add it 739, but it's up to you, based on how many objects you want. So I will go here and put the input for the fan, and let me get the fan entity name. I copied it and I paste it here. Okay, and in this case I want to add our objects, which now is not light, but I want it to rotate. Okay, and the object is fan living. Now we define the rotation setup, and here I have to make it rotate around the y-axis. So I have the options to rotate it in multiple directions. So if it's like a horizontal or vertical fan, I have the options. And now how many revolutions per second? So let's put 2, for example, revolutions per second, and let us see how it will look like. So now we have the shape. Let me go and switch on the fan, and now it's rotating. Maybe 2 seconds, 2 revolutions per second is too much. So let us maybe edit it again and put maybe 1 revolution per second and see how it will look like. I think that's fine. So I have the fan rotating as we see. Similarly, we can do the same with the other fan. What is remaining is the garage door. So the garage door has the same also. It might have multiple objects. We have the first object is the cube 181. So we paste it here, and then I add another object, which is the window, the glass part, which is 179. And then I add the cross, which is having the code of cube 180. And We are done here with the objects. So let me go into the entities and add a new entity. It's input garage. Here, let me get the code from here, 3D garage door. And I copy the code from here and I paste it here. And then, nope, I expand the options and I say that this is, I want it to actually hide. So I want the garage door to be hidden if the garage is open. And I put here garage, okay, and hide if the state is open. And in this case, because I created a boolean, so it is on or off. And now this you can adjust based on the nature of the entity itself. So now the garage door is closed. If I assume that this is open now, it will disappear, as we see. Okay, so this is open and this is closed. And this is how it works. Now for the outdoor lights, it is the same as the lights we have done. Now the floor plan is ready, and as we see, we can zoom around, we can move it, we can switch the lights on and off. And as we see, to switch on and off the lights, we have to double click, but there's another option here, which in the appearance, I can say that it is on click. So this no means double click, yes means click. So if now I changed it, it will be one click, as we see. The last part for today's video is how we can manage the day and night situation. So currently the floor plan or the card ignores what is the state, what is the time. But if we want to include also more options, we can define here that we have the sky, okay? And if I say yes, the system will take into consideration the time of the day. So currently it is during the day, so we have the sun and it moves with the time, with the sun actually entity. Still I can switch on and off the lights, but it is taking into consideration the light, the sunlight, and maybe the effect on the windows here and so on. So this is another option which you can make. There are some options for doors and some options for windows, which I will explain in more details during the next videos. I hope you enjoy this, and please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel and follow my Facebook page. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.